if you take a giant step back and you say, okay, AI is going to drive the cost of app development, towards or asymptotic with zero. What is still scarce in that world, right? So I put on my sort of like Bitcoiner, like what's great for the world hat, and then I put on my investor hat. If I put on my investor hat, I'm like, what's actually scarce in a world where open protocols, things like Bitcoin, Lightning, and Nostr allow for interoperability of data, interoperability of identity with Nostr, and plug into open payment networks. And now with vibe coding tools, like, okay, it's a lot of easy switching cost, especially if you can bring that identity with you with Nostr. So what's still scarce in that world? Well, I come up with like 3 major things that are still scarce, arguably 4. One is obviously Bitcoin itself. So companies that are able to start stacking and building that stack quickly, that's very valuable. The second is human attention, of course, or the attention, let's say, of the entity that owns the capital. So not to be speciesist, perhaps that dies over times, but attention, which is in fact all you need. Attention is still a very scarce resource, but that's a little bit trickier because then you're actually playing for like what's the thing that's going to get hot, and I think that could shift quickly over time, like films versus long-standing sort of getting trapped into a network like a Facebook or something. And so I definitely think there's always going to be investment opportunity to find what gets hot, whether that's an app, whether that's a podcast, like. Everything is competing for the same resource there, which is human attention. And so, so there's always going to be money to be made there. But I think that's going to be a lot more sort of like Hollywood-esque at this point. It's going to be a lot more projects that come quickly. Teams get together. They make a lot of money on it if they do well. But then they break up and they, try new things. And I think that attention cycle is going to get faster and faster. So I think that's frankly hard to invest in now. Unless you have some like real strong thesis or alpha around that, I think that's tricky. The third thing though, and this is what I'm getting increasingly obsessed with, is the infrastructure itself. And man, we need to do a whole show on this and potentially way more than a show, but I'm basically, as you guys know, longtime Solar Bull, longtime Solar Maxi, along with Bitcoin. And the deeper I'm getting in this right now, the deeper I'm seeing that, the ability to build, like the demand right now for compute is literally insatiable. And one of the biggest limiting factors is energy. And there are some very wild ideas I'm exploring at the moment around there's still all of this old world thinking of like, well, we need to find a way to connect you to the grid and this and that. But if you just follow the curves and see how much cheaper solar keeps getting reliably, how much cheaper batteries keep getting reliably. And you pair that with what I call sort of a new permissionless paradigm, which I think Bitcoin is definitely what kicked it all off, of like, oh no, we don't need, potentially to connect to the grid. We can do everything behind the meter. We can literally not even sign contracts, but we know as long as there's a kilowatt hour produced, there is a buyer of last resort that pays for it. I think that paradigm is going to come more and more into the compute realm as well. So I am increasingly becoming obsessed with this idea that there are ways to build, call it even like new grids that just like leave the whole old grid behind. And I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity for people who are kind of like big, wild thinkers out there. That obviously requires a lot more capital than I have to deploy, but I think, there's still room for me in that early stage to help someone get that idea off the ground. But I'll have more coming on that, but that's an area I'm getting pretty obsessed with.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like if you have a big idea like that, it doesn't need to necessarily fit your existing kind of capital structure, right? You could go raise new capital for something big and ambitious that's more focused on a particular venture, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm definitely exploring all that. So I think, and again, I think a fourth area that's scarce we've all talked about is position in the Lightning Network itself. So I continue to be also very, very, very bullish on any company that, ideally owns some, human attention or some, sort of network effect like Cash App or something. And I think a lot of the apps out there today do that, or have the potential to do that. Things like Albi, Breeze, which is really exciting, sort of the SDK adoption they're getting. And I do think that position, the sort of a railroad analogy we've used, is also very good. And I'm sure there's others I'm not thinking of. So to be clear, I'm still very bullish on a lot of the sort of traditional Bitcoin companies, but I think that companies that integrate Nostr. But I'm increasingly thinking it's like using Bitcoin, using Lightning, using Nostr is going to become kind of table stakes. And so then the question becomes, where beyond that does value actually accrue, and where is it potentially capturable? And I think some more of the actual hard infrastructure stuff is getting really interesting to me.